And we are back with game number, let's say, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Deli has first turn. Delial versus Turdz. Currently, Turdz leads 1-0. We haven't seen a rare in a while. I'm still really curious if one of the AA rares can be set up to legitimately just sweep the game. You could imagine it playing off Gulka's 2 or 2998's 2. It'd be very interesting to see. So far, cards like this have been more likely to be used for instance, Tella or Fuzzy. I always forget which is which. I think that's Tella. Tella in 6, with say Mustadio to recapture in 3 and 9. Standard, no rules kind of play. Turd's hand does have a pretty weak card in 8-6-7-7, but Deli's 7-9-7-6 is quite poor as well. Deli has a pretty serious up weakness, and Turdz has a somewhat less serious up weakness. Turdz has A's in every direction but up. Deli has A's in every direction but up. 2-8-8-A and 3 is safe. Is there a big setup against it? We gotta look for setups even now, because I haven't been, and I should be. So Gulka in 3 is safe, and Turdz doesn't have safety in reply in 1 or 2, because anything in 1 can be taken by 2A, and anything in 2 can be taken by 2A. However, Bosch in 6 is a potentially strong rejoinder, though it gives Deli safety in 9 if he wants it. So Deli could play out this game aiming for safety. He's going to end up with some clunky cards. I don't know how promising that actually is, but Gulka in 3 is definitely a way you could start this game. What else is there? I could check my messages. Alright. Deli seems to... I may be reading his comment wrong, but I think Deli thinks he has a pretty huge advantage here. I'm a little less sold. In the game Deli lost, if you look at the hands, and we use that as a kind of description of what a bad hand looks like, he had 9-5-7-8, 9-2-8-9, 7-9-6-7, A9-5-5, and 8A-6-3. And I think the thing to note there is he had 2 cards with A's on them, and both of them fit in the same corner. He did have 3 cards for the same... he did have arguably 3 cards for the same corner and 2 cards for the corner next to it. So actually, maybe what I was claiming last time about not having redundancy was... maybe it was a combination of having tons of redundancy and having no A's. But if we look at Turd's hand here, it does have 4 corner cards for the top, 1 or 3, and it does have 2 cards without A's. But I still think this has to be less bad than the hand Deli had. I also wonder if it is easier to hold ties on second turn. I'm not sure about this, but in game 1, with balanced hands, I thought second turn had a kind of advantage, and I thought there were balanced hands there. In game 6, I thought there were relatively balanced hands, and second turn ended up, I think, with an advantage. In game 5, I thought both hands were pretty reasonable, and second turn actually forced first turn into an only 1 move ties situation. Now, I might be remembering wrong or misevaluating how big the hand advantages were, but it struck me that the games I thought there was a really big hand advantage were kind of 2, 3, and 4. But the games I didn't think there was a drastic hand advantage, I've generally thought second turn had an advantage every time. So while this is clearly a very pleasant starter for first turn, my sort of statistical thought is I think this rule set might be better for second turn. And my other thought is everything's gonna die. But I can't just rely on that forever. It is very hard to find a good-looking move for Turdz, right? Any move you put in, I can say something that looks scary. You go something 1 or 2, I'll take it from the other of 1 or 2. That looks really scary. You take safety in 6, I'm going to go 9, probably with Mustadio to keep 2A's raw ability to take things. That looks really scary. You chuck something random in 7. Well, what are you chucking? If you chuck 8, 6, 7, 7, I'm getting even more safety. Now Mustadio's safe. If you chuck Bosch, I'm getting more safety. Now 3, 9, A6, and 1 is safe. So you're really ended up with limited options of what to chuck, and they are very uncomfortable. So like anything you do has a drawback, has a pretty significant drawback. I think the lesson we're learning on this set is if you look a move further than that, you'll usually find some idea that actually cleans up the game to a reasonable extent. But you do have to do that work, and you have to do it in limited time. So my official prediction, without having put in the cards to the solver or anything like that, but just is, I don't think this is a win. I think this is one of the more dangerous positions we've seen, possibly more dangerous than games 2 and 3. But I do not think this is a forced win. I think Turdz' hand has enough power in each direction, enough A's in the hand, and second turn, and that should add up to enough that not just there's like 1 or 2 ties, but there's 40 possible moves here. So let's make a guess, you and I, you dear viewer, let's guess in this moment, how many ties do you think there are for Turdz? The average number of ties in a normal game is about 27 out of 40, about 2/3. Against against a starter like this, a safe starter, the average number is significantly lower than that. It's higher than I would expect. Like, you might think against something like this, you need something really, really precise. There will only be a few moves. It's usually like 10 or more, but like somewhere in the 10 vicinity, if I remember right, which I might not be remembering right, kind of pulling numbers out of my ass. But say there are normally 10 against a move like this. On a rule set like this, when you can't take stuff, it is harder to come back from it than normal. So there is the concept that 10 becomes 0, right? There is a case for that. And my guess is Deli thinks it's one of those spots where there's just not counterplay. And maybe he's right. I'm really not sure what Turdz can do. I'm going to make my official guess 7 ties. I'm going to start having that run because we may as well. That'll take forever to come out. The game will probably be over and I'll be off eating dinner when it has it out, so I may as well get it started now. Should close secondary programs because it does not run fast. But this is definitely very dangerous for Turdz, and if Turdz holds this, it will be a very impressive hold, perhaps even more impressive than his prior holds. But I'm trying to learn as we go, and my guess... Okay, Deli's now very likely to go 9. Turdz grabs his own safety, which seems a very reasonable choice. I was mentally penciling it in as kind of, okay, there are a few moves that look logical, probably most of those tie, and then there's a few weird moves I won't think about that probably tie. That was my guess. So 40 possible moves. How many tie? I guess 7. It's now running. Actually, it can run turn 2 pretty quickly. So we'll see what the count is. And then, maybe, we'll see if Turdz, in fact, played one of the ties, which is harder than guessing the number. Ooh, it's looking like I'm going to be close. Wow! I did it. 7 ties. Wow. Is that the best weirdo call I've ever done? Probably. This is now my favorite game of the match, obviously. Yeah, what a fun game that was. Yeah. Alright, where were the ties? There was the tie in 1. That's surprising. A tie in 8. Yeah, there was always going to be some ties in some random ass squares. A tie in 2. I think that's pretty surprising. A tie in 6. Another tie in 8. Another tie in 2. And a tie in 5. So I would count 5 and 8. The 2 ties, the 1 tie in 5 and the tie in 8 is kind of random ass moves. All moves in 7 were losing. Was not good to just chuck a card in the opposite corner. That's interesting. And then 3 ties in 1 or 2 is kind of surprising. I guess it says if you play in 1 or 2 and Tella takes it, you can take Tella back in a way that leads to a decent game. Maybe, but that seems so hard for Turdz because you have so little up power. Ugh. Ugh. That looks really difficult to me. So we have 3 that I'd put as weird, 3 that I'd put as I really thought you couldn't go on the top, but apparently you can go up top, and 1 in 6, which was a square we were looking at with 568A. I haven't looked to see if 568A was the tie in 6, just where the ties were, because I think it's more fun to leave some mystery here. I should also actually, while we're here, let's have it run and see if there was a forced win. I think if this safety wasn't a forced win, there can't have been one. But I think this is another thing that's going to tell us a lot about the rule set. Turdz' hand was really weak going up, but it had A's in 3 directions. It had 3 cards with A's, not 2, and it had second turn. And I think those are just enough advantages to get it out of the you're lost zone. So I think Deli will play Mustadio in 9. And then Turdz really has to find something. That's going to be a spot where there's probably... Now, every time I think there's not many ties, it turns out there's a whole bunch. But we're going to say it. That's a spot. It's going to be hard to pull out the tie there, right? Maybe Deli can find something other than 9. That's going to be hard. It's been such an interesting match on hands because, again, Deli has gotten the favored hand more games, and Turdz has shown really nice defensive ability. However, the one time Turdz got the favored hand, it was a forced win, and Turdz converted beautifully. Turdz has played a beautiful match, but Deli has also played a beautiful match. I think Deli's big advantage has been in games that looked neutral to me, right? I think neutral play has favored Deli. Turdz has been clinical with his winning position, and Turdz has been phenomenal at defending poor positions. However, in games to me that looked like both players had pretty usable hands and it wasn't like a huge swing, I think Deli's consistently gotten the advantage. I think Deli has had the advantage in neutral play, and we haven't seen Deli have to defend really bad positions that there was any hope to defend. We've seen Turdz do really well there. We also haven't seen Deli convert positions that he was winning, and we've seen Turdz do really well there. But the one place we've seen both of them, so Turdz has done 2 really impressive things that we haven't seen Deli have to do. The one thing we can compare them directly on, I do think Deli has done better. I think he's played better in the neutral game. But on this rule set, playing well in the neutral game, I think is the least useful ability. Because advantages in the neutral game are never going to be enough to be winning against really strong opponents. You are never going to outplay either of Delial or Turdz enough from a neutral game, or it just seems so unlikely to me. Never is too strong a word, but it's going to be so hard to outplay them by enough in a neutral game to get a win here. So I think Deli's been really impressive in the neutral game. Like, meaning, you look at the position and you're like, that's about even, or slight advantage to someone, could go whichever way, because both positions look equally plausible-ish, right? In a neutral-ish game, I think Deli's been great. But I don't think that matters. The question is who can defend their really bad positions and who can attack their really good ones. And it's hard to judge how well someone's attacking their really good ones because there was never like a win for him to find. I think Deli has put about as much pressure as you could hope he would. And I think Turdz has defended really well. And again, in the game Turdz won, Turdz was really clinical, and that meant Deli never had a chance to defend, which meant we've never seen him do that. But there's kind of this interesting thing. I've thought about this a little with players of like, I think I am really good in the somewhat disadvantaged, or like in bad to neutral positions. I think I'm very, very strong. I think in lost positions, I am quite weak. Now, sometimes lost positions you never have a chance, but I lose lost positions more than other top players do. I do not find ways to confuse, obfuscate, make tricky near as well as they do. And I think that's a kind of position I am subpar compared to people my level. I think often in a match, you can see what the kind of neutral game looks like in an elongated match, and kind of who tends to get advantages there. And sometimes it goes back and forth, but often it leans one way. That doesn't mean that player wins the match, though, right? It could be that a serious hand change means you're no longer playing games that are all that balanced. Um, I have really struggled against Deli in neutral games, which is why I very often do a lot of hand switching to try to catch him out on a hand advantage. I'm not trying to outplay him in a neutral game. I think he's incredibly strong there. And I think he is trying to outplay me in a neutral game. I think he's saying, I like this hand, I am comfortable in this hand, I am fine, even if it concedes a little bit of advantage, as long as it's a hand I'm comfortable with, I think I can outplay someone by enough to win, right? He has a lot of confidence there, and I think it's earned confidence. Now, I haven't run stats recently on kind of Turdz' play. I think Turdz is very strong at everything. And I think he is one of the more consistently strong at things across the board players. I think when he gets lost positions, he is very good at getting out of them. When he is in a worse position, he is very good at finding a way to hold it. I think in the past, I'm not sure, and this is a while ago, I think you might argue his weakness is being clinical on his winning positions. But I'm not even sure that's true. No, I think it was he's very clinical, but he doesn't create as many chances as other top players. It was one of not creating as many chances or not being quite as clinical, and I'm not sure which it was. But one of those was his main differentiator from the other best players. But I don't remember what it was. Anyway, this is a very difficult position. He has picked up 6-3 A9. And yeah, played it in 2. So this is a very specific move, right? This is very much I have calculated what happens if you go 1, and I think I can hold there. Either Tello 1 or 3-9 A6 1. So let's look at Tello 1. Deli goes up 6-4. And really, we should be checking just play next to. And I think Turdz' point is just he recaptures in 4, and that's actually just safe. That's just a safe card. It will be 5-5, and every card is safe. And Turdz has jacked, which Deli's hand will not be able to flip at the end. So that should tie. Okay. What if Deli goes 3-9 A6 in 1? Now, everything on board is safe, but Deli can attack stuff with Tello. So I think that looks more dangerous on a first glance, because now there is no safety. With these A's on the board, Tello can either overpower anything or can same wall any A. And Turdz needs to have found something in that spot. And I think the idea has to be something like, no, Jektin 5 doesn't work. Because Jektin 5 is not met by Tello in 4, when Turdz could play Shadow in 7, but is met by 7-9, 7-6 in 4, when Tello does sweep the bottom. So 3-9 A6 in 1 looks very dangerous, and like you really have to be precise. I'm not sure what Deli could play other than that here. I don't see another like candidate move, so I'm gonna stick on 3-9 A6 in 1 as the critical try. I think anything Turdz puts in 4, Deli can play Tello in 5. He goes up 6-4. Turdz' only capture is in 8, and Deli 7-9, 7-6 captures back. So 4 loses. I think anything in 5 loses to 7-9, 7-6, and 4, and Tello sweeps the bottom. So I think you're left with 7 and 8. And I'm there's a very good chance I'm missing something. I'm not great at calculating this set. I think you're left with 7 and 8. It's hard to put a card in 8 at all, actually. Um, Anything in 8 that Tella can take from 5, Tella takes from 5 and ends the game. So you kind of have to play Shadow in 8. But Shadow in 8, Tella goes in 5 anyway. And 7, 9, 7, 6 either captures Shadow or captures whatever you put in 7. So I think 8 loses, which leaves us with one final square, 7. Now, everything on board is safe. But I think the problem with 7 is Deli goes, ooh, maybe 7, 2, 9, 9, 8, and 7. Because I was thinking Deli should go 8 with 7, 9, 7, 6, so 2A, 2A could sweep. But 2A, 2A cannot flip that 2, so then Jecht in 5 ties. I think 2, 9, 9, 8, 7 might be the tie there. I'm going to start putting in future moves of the game just because I'm curious. So, okay, I don't know how much I should say to leave tension. Well, first of all, 2998 and 7 was a terrible idea. Yeah, it doesn't work at all. They just go 4. I was really focused on side to side. So Turdz' move in 6 did tie. He found one of the 7 ties. But the move in 2 was not one of the 3 ties. And his ties were only in 1 or 8. Ah, geez, that's hard. No, I didn't mean to run what I just ran. 6, 3, A9, and 8 was a tie. Oh, that is hard. And going in 1 is so hard there. Yeah, in practice, I think this was really hard. And I think 3, 9, A6, and 1 does win. Yeah, it does win. Deli's going to even up the series here. And we could say on one level, this is the first time we've seen a mistake on this match. But this was a very hard random to save. I shouldn't underplay how hard this random was to save. It was not a forced win, but it was very difficult. And I should also say, I think this is the third, arguably fourth. I'm not counting a game where Turdz had only one tie with 5 moves to go as a really dangerous position, but you could very easily count that as more dangerous. For how many ties he had and how many moves were left, that was arguably his hardest move from a pure solver perspective. But I think on a human level, that move was pretty straightforward. So I think there have been 3 randoms that have been really bad for Turdz and 1 that was horrendous for Deli. And it's really hard to save 3 really bad spots. Like, that is just really hard. I say this often. No one gets 2, 3 horrible randoms or horrible positions and just, no one's percentage of saving horrible positions, even when there is a save, is all that high. Obviously there's a big gap between the best players and weaker players, but like no one's above that kind of like, you get a horrible position, you save it 2/3 of the time. No one. Or 3/4, somewhere in that range. I don't remember exactly. And yeah. So Deli evens it up, and I think there's a very interesting question of who has been favored by randoms so far. Because I think Turdz has had 3 really bad but salvageable randoms, and Deli has had 1 unsalvageable random. Which means it would be very easy for Deli to have already won multiple games if Turdz didn't defend so well. But also, given Turdz's excellent clinical play, Deli was going to lose a game here, and if Turdz had managed to find a tie here, he could still be up 1-0. But it was really, really hard to find a tie on this one. I completely, on turn 2, when Turdz went Bosch in 6, I wrote off 1 and 2 completely, and almost half the ties were in 1 or 2. I don't know what in this position would lead you to look in 8. Like, why would you want the game to be up-down? Your hand is horrible up-down. So if you rule out 1 and 2 and you rule out 8, You've eliminated 5 of the possible ties. The only remaining ties are a move in 5. Why would you go in 5? I don't understand that. Or Bosch in 6. I think Bosch in 6 was like the only humanly sensible tie. Of course, I'm not counting Italians or certain Canadians as human for this count. So Bosch in 6 was the only human tie. Turdz finds it. And then after Deli's move in 9, he has to find either a really difficult move in 1. Though actually, you could see why, from the way the game went, why 1 would be good. Because we looked at 2, and we saw if Deli goes fussy in 1, Turdz holds. Deli needed to find 3-9-A6 in 1. So maybe if you go in 1 and sack it to some capture of fussy in 2, you can set up the same kind of thing, right? Maybe you can see how that's a better version of going in 2, but it's really hard to get there. And the other move, 6-3-A9 and 8, like, you can get there, but you have to check so many things before you do get there. That seems so difficult. Really, really hard save here. And, yeah, Deli is going to even the series here. Turdz does play in 7. I also ruled out every square but 7 and ended up with, well, if there's a chance to hold, it's going to be in 7. But Fussy is too good a sweeper. We finally see a rare be that endgame sweeper to snag the win. And here we see it actually sweeping up down, which is kind of funny. But the problem is, either of the other cards in 7, Deli can just play Fussy in 4. For some reason, I was only looking at 8 to try to set up Fussy side to side, but actually the Fussy up-down setup is better. 1-1. Again, I don't know who is favored by randoms. I think you could argue it either way. And I do hope they change the rule set for the final game, because I think this has come down to getting these devastatingly bad randoms. Like, I think each player lost the worst random they got, and most of the other randoms, I really didn't think there were super serious winning chances. This one, I'm pretty sure if you check the commentary, if you rewind, I was more worried for Turdz this one than I have been on prior games. I think this was more dangerous. Yeah. And of course, we could change to a rule set I'm a bigger fan of and just get a really unfair random as well there. But I think there's a little more counterplay in those cases. And there's also significantly more chance for someone to win with the game having normal play, right? Without it being based on someone getting a completely horrible random. I missed a move in the thing. I missed 3-9-A6 in 1. 2-A lands in 5 with 1-A-8-8 remaining and an 8-2 win for Deli. Amusing that both players, when they've lost, have given the other person an 8-2 win. And the series is now tied up 1-1, and they will continue another day. Very exciting finals, and I think very clearly the two best players of the tournament have made it here. And these have been very good games, even if I complain constantly about the rule set. All right, see you next time. Or hear me next time? Whatever.